You're standing at the edge of a grave you don't remember digging. Inside lie two small coffins. They bear your name, but they're not yours. Someone whispers behind you, "You've lived this before." You spin, but there's no one there. Only the smell of wet earth, the echo of children laughing where no children should be. This is not a dream. This is not fiction. This is England, 1957. And it is here, in the quiet town of Hexham, that something happened the world was never meant to believe. Two little girls, Joanna and Jacqueline Pollock, dead in an instant, a car mounting the curb, their small bodies thrown and broken on the asphalt. A tragedy sealed by headlines and funerals. But what no one could bury was what came after. For on October 4th, 1958, a year later to the day, two new daughters are born to the same mother. They're not twins in the usual sense, but they speak names of toys they've never seen. They describe playgrounds that no longer exist. They point to scars on their own bodies where the dead girls were injured, and they whisper, with eyes that shouldn't know, "This is where we died." You weren't supposed to hear this story. It isn't just about reincarnation. It isn't just about memory. It's about something far older, far more organized, hiding in plain sight. A mechanism of control that trades in identity, trauma, and bloodline. A secret older than kings. As you watch this, your pulse will quicken. Because the Pollock Twins mystery isn't just about two little girls, it's about you, your mind, your memories, the possibility that the self you believe you are isn't yours at all. Tonight, you will descend, each minute a layer peeled back, each word a door unlocked, and when you emerge, if you emerge, you will never see your own life the same way again. This is not entertainment. This is initiation. Welcome to the story of the Pollock Twins, and the forbidden knowledge it points to. The official story ends at the newspapers. Tragedy, rebirth, mystery. But the unofficial story, the one buried under layers of polite disbelief, begins where science refuses to tread. The Pollock family's new daughters, Jennifer and Gillian, knew details of a life they should never have known. They described the inside of the old family home before they had ever entered it. They called out the names of neighbors dead for years. They wept when they passed the schoolyard their predecessors once played in, whispering, "Our playground," as if their memories had bled across lifetimes. This was not fantasy. This was documented testimony. Yet the experts, the institutions, the so-called guardians of truth, dismissed it. Not because the evidence was weak, but because the implications were too dangerous. Why dangerous? Because if memory can cross death, then identity can be rewritten. And if identity can be rewritten, then what you call yourself is not sacred, but programmable. Do you think governments, secret societies, and ancient priesthoods haven't noticed this? Do you think the manipulation of souls, the crafting of false selves, isn't the ultimate weapon? Ask yourself why the reincarnation stories of children are mocked in the West, but treated as sacred data in closed-door research programs. Ask yourself why the Pollock case was quietly filed away, never publicly debunked, but never truly investigated. You're not just watching a story of two girls, you're watching the mask slip on a system that has existed for millennia. From the mystery cults of Eleusis to the bloodline rituals of hidden dynasties, the powerful have sought not just to rule bodies, but to own identities, to harvest memory itself. The Pollock twins were a fracture in that curtain, a glitch the system could not erase. And glitches frighten the architects of reality. You feel it, don't you? At slow unease, the question rising in your chest. Who am I, really? Good. That's the first step. Keep watching. Each section you descend will strip away another layer of the illusion. This is not superstition. This is a pattern. And patterns are weapons once you know how to read them. Every society has its myths. But myths are not just stories, they're operating systems. They encode how you see life, death, memory, and power. When the Pollock twins began speaking about lives they had never lived, the public saw reincarnation. But behind that word sits a darker reality. The possibility of engineered memory transfer, of consciousness receding, of the soul as a data stream. Ancient texts don't hide this, they flaunt it. The Egyptians called it the Ka, the Greeks called it the psyche. Secret orders call it continuity of self, and the modern world gives it a sterile name, identity imprinting. All the same principle. Who controls the continuity of your identity controls you. Look carefully at the Pollock case. The twins' new bodies bore birthmarks where the dead girls had their fatal wounds, their personalities split like mirror images, one child resembling the elder sister lost, the other the younger. When interviewed, they would sometimes answer to the names of the dead. These weren't hallucinations, they were signatures, and signatures can be forged. You're thinking, if this is real, why don't we hear about it everywhere? Because power is not built on what you know. It's built on what you can't prove, but can be made to feel. The real architecture of control isn't censorship, it's misdirection. Let the public laugh at reincarnation, while in private rooms, the elite fund decades of experiments into memory transfer, hypnosis, and personality engineering. MK Ultra was not the beginning. It was the sloppy spillover of a far older art. The Pollock twins are a breadcrumb, a faint echo of a practice that has never stopped. If you've ever woken from a dream and wondered whose memories you were walking through, you're not alone. If you've ever felt a flash of recognition in a stranger's eyes, a phantom familiarity, you've brushed again. Since the edge of the same truth these girls embodied, you've been told all your life that your identity is yours. What if it isn't? What if the self you carry was seeded, shaped, or recycled to keep you locked in a pattern you never chose? Keep listening. With each breath you're stepping deeper into forbidden ground. The ground beneath your feet is shifting. The truth is not what you've been taught. The truth is what's been hidden. Power has always been obsessed with bloodlines. Monarchs marry within circles. Secret orders guard genealogies. Corporations track DNA under the banner of health data. But why? Because blood carries not only genetic codes, but what ancient cultures believed were spiritual imprints, memory at the cellular level. The Pollock twins case was never just a curiosity. It was a crack in the wall, showing how memory, trauma, and identity can pass beyond a single lifetime. And if that's possible, then the ultimate form of control is not money, not armies, but ownership of identity across generations. Think about the institutions that define who you are. Birth certificates, school records, medical files, credit histories, psychological profiles, digital footprints. Each one is a layer of a larger grid, a lattice of control that tells you this is you, while slowly erasing who you were. When Gillian and Jennifer Pollock began speaking about a past life, they were violating that lattice. They were remembering outside the approved script. And what happens to anyone who remembers too much? They're silenced, ridiculed, or written off as delusional. Not because they're wrong, but because they're dangerous to the order. The churches once claimed authority over your soul. Governments claim authority over your body. But what's rising now is subtler, a quiet war for your memory. When you cannot trust your own memories, you cannot trust your own decisions. And when you cannot trust your decisions, you become programmable. The Pollock twins story isn't just spooky, it's a preview, a signal that memory can be broken, moved, or even planted. Not science fiction, not someday, now. If you feel a growing tension in your chest, that's not fear, it's recognition. A part of you knows this already. A part of you remembers. As you descend with me, you're not just hearing about two girls in England. You're glimpsing a system older than history, a system that uses your own mind as its battlefield. The question is no longer whether reincarnation is real. The question is, who benefits if it is? Every empire knows, control the story, you control the people. But the next level is darker, control the self that's telling the story. Memory is the anchor of identity. Shatter the anchor, and you can tow the ship anywhere. This is not theory, this is practiced art. From the trauma-based initiations of ancient mystery cults to the classified research of modern intelligence agencies, the blueprint is the same. Break the self. Rewrite the self. Bind the new self to a symbol. Symbols are the keys. Without them, the reprogramming doesn't hold. Look at the Pollock twins again. The car that struck their predecessors. The sudden death. The reappearance in new bodies. Trauma, death, rebirth. The pattern of an initiation ritual. What if this wasn't random? What if the universe, or something operating within it, uses trauma as a portal for identity transfer? What if those who understand this, the architects of control, have been harvesting it for centuries? Your world is soaked in trauma for a reason. War, scandal, crisis, disaster, constant repetition, like the chanting of a spell. Each event weakens the anchors of collective memory. Each repetition makes it easier to seed new narratives, new selves. Do you think it's an accident that entertainment, news, and ritual all blur together now? That your attention is fragmented? No, this is the reprogramming of a civilization. But here's the fracture they fear: awareness. A man who sees the pattern begins to step outside it. That's why you're here. You're not just watching a story, you're undergoing a process. And if you felt a pressure building as you watch, it's not only emotion, it's a threshold. Cross it, and you'll never think the same way again. To anchor what you're hearing, I want you to do something dangerous but symbolic. In the comments, write this phrase twice. I remember before I was me. This isn't a gimmick. It's a signal. To yourself, to the algorithm, to the hidden architecture watching. Writing it locks this awareness into you. You'll feel the shift. That's the moment you stop being a spectator and start being a participant. From here on, each section goes deeper. You've opened the door. Now step through it. When you start looking at history through the lens of memory control, entire epochs rearrange themselves. Religions, governments, and empires weren't just fighting over land or gold. They were fighting over who owns the narrative of human origin, destiny, and selfhood. If the Pollock twins are a clue, then reincarnation isn't just a spiritual curiosity. It's a system of continuity, a system that can be hacked, and every empire has tried to hack it. Ancient temples were not just places of worship. They were memory chambers, rituals of death and rebirth, symbolic coffins, blindfolds and bindings, chants that fracture the ordinary mind. These weren't primitive superstitions. They were technologies of imprinting. A novice enters as one person. Trauma, sensory overload, and symbols tear the self apart. He emerges as someone else, loyal to the cult, bound by memory engineered through ritual. Governments and intelligence agencies inherited this model, stripped away the incense, added electrodes and pharmaceuticals, but the architecture is the same. Why do you think mass schooling begins with pledge recitations, anthem singing, standardized tests? Why do you think religion trains children before they can think critically? Why do you think your digital life, every scroll, every notification, is designed to deliver micro shocks of reward and punishment? Because trauma and repetition are the oldest tools for shaping memory. And whoever shapes memory shapes belief. Whoever shapes belief shapes behavior. Whoever shapes behavior shapes the future. The Pollock twins stand at the edge of this hidden history, a living anomaly the system couldn't fully control. Two small girls who remembered a life they never lived. Proof that continuity exists outside the approved channels. Proof that memory can survive, bypassing the rituals of erasure. This is why their story was marginalized, not because it was trivial, but because it was a threat. You may already feel the shadow of this realization. Your childhood memories flicker. Your dreams feel less like fantasy and more like archives. That's not imagination. That's the edge of your programming loosening. The more you see, the less you can unsee, and that's exactly what they fear. Look closely at the world's ruling families, dynasties that rise, fall, and reappear under new banners. Names change, coats of arms shift, but the same bloodlines resurface century after century. You're told this is just privilege and inheritance, but what if it's more than that? What if the elites who have shaped history are not just passing down wealth, but memory, techniques of continuity, fragments of selfhood that slip from one body to another like software transferred from one device to the next? The Pollock twins were a glitch, two ordinary children who remembered without initiation, without bloodline training, without ritual. That's why their case is so dangerous to the system, because the system depends on secrecy, continuity for the few, amnesia for the many. Power isn't just about controlling the present, it's about controlling who you've been and who you're allowed to become. Throughout history, you find whispers of this hidden practice. Tibetan lamas who identify as their own rebirths, carrying knowledge across lifetimes. Pharaohs who were said to return as their sons. Secret societies whose leaders claim the spirit of the founder lives on in me. These aren't metaphors, they're confessions. The rituals of trauma, symbol, and bloodline are designed to create continuity. The goal, a ruling class that never dies, just reemerges in new flesh, while the masses are kept in cycles of forgetting. Modern science has dressed this up with new language. Epigenetics, memory transfer, consciousness studies. But the principle hasn't changed. Continuity gives power. Amnesia breeds compliance. The Pollock twins show what happens when continuity leaks outside the vault, when memory transfer touches ordinary people. And the first instinct of the powerful is always the same. Cover it, ridicule it, bury it. Ask yourself why you've never heard this framing before. Ask yourself why you're only hearing it now in a corner of the internet, from a voice that isn't on the evening news, because you're not meant to. But once you glimpse the pattern, you can't unglimpse it. You begin to sense the long arc of something vast, ancient, and patient, an agenda that has been in motion since before your grandparents were born. This is the real history under history. This is the forbidden continuity of power. If trauma and ritual once belonged to temples and secret chambers, today they belong to algorithms. The same architecture, break, imprint, bind, has simply been digitized. What was once done to initiates under candlelight is now done to entire populations through glowing screens. You scroll, you click, you share. Microdoses of fear, outrage, and novelty fracture your attention. Symbols, logos, memes, hashtags bind your emotions to new narratives, all while you believe you're choosing freely. In the old initiations, a novice would be deprived of sleep, bombarded with images, plunged into darkness, then shown a symbol of power. Today, your phone vibrates in your pocket at 2:13 a.m. with a headline designed to spike adrenaline. You're lured into a stream of images your nervous system cannot process. Between dopamine hits and cortisol spikes, your memory anchors loosen. And into that loosened soil, new identities are planted. Identities that buy what they're told to buy. Vote how they're told to vote. Believe what they're told to believe. This is not conspiracy. This is business. Look again at the Pollock twins. Their memory breach was spontaneous, unmediated by rituals or algorithms. That's why their case terrifies the architects of control. Because if continuity can emerge naturally, then the monopoly is broken. If an ordinary person can remember before they were them, the whole edifice of manipulation cracks. That's why you've been trained to dismiss stories like this as silly or unscientific, because if you start to believe them, you might start to remember. You're not supposed to remember the patterns of your programming. You're supposed to identify with the avatars handed to you, your job title, your social feed, your shopping preferences. But beneath that, your deeper self waits, the one that cannot be erased. The Pollock twins' memories weren't just a glitch. They were a reminder, a warning, proof that something inside you survives the reprogramming, proof that you might still wake up. The next time you feel the urge to scroll, ask yourself, is this me, or is this my programming? Because the moment you ask that question, the spell begins to break. And when the spell breaks, the architects of control lose their grip. The truth was never hidden because it was weak. It was hidden because it was too strong. For thousands of years, institutions wrapped it in rituals, symbols, and laws, not to protect you from it, but to protect themselves from you. Knowledge of continuity, memory transfer, and identity control is the philosopher's stone of power. Whoever holds it can shape dynasties, rewrite history, and manufacture belief. That's why you're taught to laugh at reincarnation, scoff at memory transfer, and dismiss stories like the Pollock twins as superstition. The laughter is the lock on the vault. Corruption in the modern world is not just about stolen money or fixed elections. It's about stolen continuity. Think about how often the past is rewritten right before your eyes. Textbooks updated to erase uncomfortable truths, old footage quietly edited, search results manipulated, entire populations convinced they remember something differently than it happened. This isn't sloppiness. This is engineered amnesia. The same technology scaled from the soul to the civilization. The Pollock twins are a ghost in that machine, a flicker of the original signal. Two small children who didn't forget. That's why their story matters more than 100 political scandals. Because scandals fade, continuity does not. The same hidden dynasties, the same structures of manipulation, the same trauma rituals are still here, just with new names, new logos, and new masks. If you can see this, you begin to step outside their reach. You feel it already, the slow lifting of a veil, the sense that the world around you is a stage. It's not paranoia. It's pattern recognition. You're remembering what you were trained to forget. And that's the crack they fear most. Not rebellion, not anger, memory, because memory is freedom. Memory dissolves the spell. Soon you'll realize this isn't just about two little girls in England. It's about you, about what you've been before, and what you could become again. The Pollock twins weren't a story to entertain you. They were a message to wake you. Up until now, you've been a witness, watching two little girls in England carry memories of another life, watching the hidden patterns of continuity and control. But you're not just a witness. You're part of the same system. If continuity is real, if identity can be transferred, erased, and seeded, then your own story is not what you think it is. Your dreams, your déjà vu, the flashes of recognition you've never been able to explain, these are not accidents. They are fractures in the mask, evidence that something in you remembers. Think about how your life has been scripted. From your earliest days, symbols were fed to you. Brands, flags, crosses, stars, pledges, all of them binding you to an identity you didn't choose. Schools and media taught you what to believe about history, about reality, about yourself. Trauma, both personal and collective, loosened your grip on old memories, and into that vacuum, new beliefs were poured. It's not just your timeline that's been edited, it's you. The Pollock twins were an accident, or perhaps an act of grace. Proof that even under the heaviest programming, memory leaks. Proof that you cannot be completely erased. Proof that identity isn't property. It's a force. And once a force awakens, it cannot be fully controlled. That's why their story matters. Not because it's strange, because it's familiar. When you start to see this, your life shifts. You stop reacting to the surface and start noticing the code underneath. Why you're drawn to certain people, why you fear certain things, why you feel called to symbols you've never studied. These are not random quirks, they are echoes. The deeper you go, the clearer they become. And once you see the echoes, you can start making different choices. Choices that aren't pre-programmed, choices that break the cycle. This is the threshold. You can stay on the surface, entertains, by a spooky story. Or you can descend and see what's actually been done to you. The Pollock twins didn't just remember a past life. They reminded you that you have one, maybe more than one, and that memory is your way out. If you've followed this far, you're not the same person who started. Something has shifted. You've started to notice the code underneath the world, the rituals, the symbols, the engineered forgetting. And once you notice, you can't go back to sleep. That's the danger. That's the power. Because awareness isn't just knowledge. Awareness is the fracture in the spell. Awareness is the place where the programming stops working. Imagine a civilization built on amnesia. People born into lives convinced they're blank slates, spending decades building identities handed to them by unseen architects. Imagine what happens when even a small percentage begins to remember, not just facts, but who they were, where they've been, what's been done to them. That's not a theory. That's a revolution of consciousness. And revolutions of consciousness terrify those who rule by deception. They can fight protests. They can suppress ideas. But they cannot control a mind that remembers itself across lifetimes. The Pollock twins were a warning shot. Two children who cracked open a seam in reality and let the light bleed through. They weren't just telling their parents about old toys and playgrounds. They were demonstrating the forbidden, continuity outside control. And if that continuity exists for them, it exists for you. The soul, or whatever you call that deeper self, cannot be owned. It can only be disguised, manipulated, or distracted. But the moment it remembers, the disguise collapses. You've been taught to fear death as an end. What if it's not an end, but a handoff? What if the same systems that govern your news, your education, and your economy also try to govern your reincarnation? A closed loop of lives, engineered to keep you compliant. The Pollock twins showed a crack in that loop, and cracks spread. You're looking at one now, inside yourself. This is why you feel that strange mix of dread and excitement. It's not just emotion, it's recognition. A door has opened. The question now is, do you step through? You've heard the story. Two little girls, a car crash, a rebirth. But you've also seen the pattern behind it. A world built to keep you forgetting. A hidden architecture feeding off your amnesia. The Pollock twins weren't a bedtime story. They were a breach, a glimpse of something you were never meant to see. And once you've glimpsed it, you cannot unknow it. You are no longer just an observer. You are standing at the edge of the same door they walked through. The truth isn't comfortable. It isn't safe. It isn't packaged for consumption. It's dangerous because it dismantles everything you thought was solid, your history, your identity, your future. But inside that danger is freedom. The freedom to remember, the freedom to choose, the freedom to break the pattern. If you felt it stirring in you, the flicker of an older self, the sense of echoes under your life, don't bury it again. Let it rise. Question every story you've been fed about who you are. Question every symbol, every ritual, every moment that feels like déjà vu. That is not madness. That is memory. And memory is your way out. The Pollock twins' legacy is not about reincarnation. It's about revelation. It's a reminder that the self you've been told you are is not all you are. That behind the programming, behind the noise, there's a continuity they cannot erase. You've just touched it, and it's waiting for you to wake up. If you've written the phrase, "I remember before I was me," in the comments, you've already signaled to yourself and to the unseen that you're stepping across a threshold. That's not a gimmick. That's an initiation, and initiations are never comfortable, but they are necessary. When you leave this video, the world will look the same, but you will not. The headlines, the rituals, the noise will try to pull you back under. Resist. Remember, you are more than the name on our ID, more than the data in your file, more than the story you were given. The Pollock twins were proof. You are the proof now. Remember who you were before you were you. And do not forget again,